Very warm greetings in the blessed name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now, last week, we saw that in the life of Joshua and in the life of the children of Israel, a very big change. If you turn your Bibles to Joshua chapter 13. Joshua chapter 13. Now, for Joshua, in verse 1, God says, now you are stricken in age. You are old. Now it is time for you to divide the land. Joshua, you are no longer to do what you used to be doing, going to battle, leading battle. No longer, Joshua, though you have been successful, used of me, the time has come. This big change in Joshua's life. Would he obey? And we saw repeatedly, even before God recorded this conversation, God kept saying, Joshua divided the land according to Moses commanded him. Joshua divided the land, gave away the inheritance according to God has commanded. So Joshua had always been faithful, even though he knew this change was coming. Big change for the children of Israel as well. No longer are they going to see Joshua lead them to battle, because the dividing of the land, this major change is they now on their own must go and clean up, mop up the remaining nations that lived around them. They had to do that. It is no longer God's plan that they go out as one people. There was this division. So the people's life also were going through a big change. Would they be faithful? Now the title today is Our King is Faithful. Are you? Are you? Now we saw that Joshua was faithful. And in the passage that we read, God brought us back to Moses as well. Was Moses faithful? Look at verse 8. And with whom the Reubenites and the Gadites have received their inheritance, which Moses gave them beyond Jordan eastward, even as Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them. Repeating, Moses gave them, even as Moses, the servant, not just Moses. Moses was serving the Lord, and he was faithful. Now, please remember, this is the eastern side of Jordan. God said so. Moses knew that he was not crossing. But Moses still faithfully knew that this change was coming. He still obeyed the Lord's commandment. The appointment, the purpose, the will of God was fulfilled by Moses faithfully. So in verse 8, there is a clear highlighting of Moses. He was faithful, just like Joshua. Was God faithful? Now there is going to be a big change. Did God say, now in this change you are on your own? Is God faithful? Now look at verse 6, chapter 13, verse 6. God himself said this. All the inhabitants of the hills, hill country from Lebanon unto, and he went on. And he said, them will I drive out from before the children of Israel. Only thou divide it by lot unto Israel, unto Israelites for an inheritance, as I have commanded thee. I will drive out. Now he says, this change is coming. But Joshua, please, no. Don't worry. Now, the children of Israel, please no, don't worry. I will be faithful as I have been. In the previous model, I was faithful. Moving forward in this change in your life, I will still be there. I will still help you. And I am in fact the one that will give the land. You just need to do your part. That is all. Only do this. Now, what has changed in your life? What do you foresee is a change coming in your life? How would you respond? Both Moses and Joshua knew about the change. They were faithful to whatever God asked them to do. They did not swerve left or right. Has some change occurred recently in your life? Or over time, it has occurred in the past? Or you see something is coming? Now, big changes can occur. Last week, we talked about fulfilling the purpose of the king. Will you accept those changes ordained by the king? I hope you will, and I hope you have. Now, this question this week is, we can accept, and sometimes there's no choice anyway. You say, there's no choice. My life has changed. There's no choice. We may just resign to it. Now, accepting by resignation is very different. Here, God is now highlighting faithfulness. Accept, and in this change, I will faithfully dispense. I will faithfully live in obedience. I will faithfully serve the Lord still in this new situation and change in my life. That is different from just submission. Now is in that submission, will you continue to be faithful? What do you think happened to the children of Israel? Joshua chapter 13. Now, we just read, God said he's faithful. God said Joshua was faithful. God said Joshua was faithful. In fact, it is interesting, if you have been noticing, in chapters 12 and 13, there is this repeating. Joshua divided land, Moses divided land. Joshua divided land, Moses divided land. And then in verse 13, Joshua divided land, Moses divided the land. They faithfully did that. That was the highlighting. But now when it came to the children of Israel, look at verse 13. Chapter 13, verse 13. Nevertheless, what a sad word. Moses faithful, Joshua faithful, Joshua faithful, Moses faithful, God is faithful. Nevertheless, the children of Israel expelled not the Geshurites and Maachathites. But the Geshurites and the Maachathites dwell among the Israels until this day. What a sad commentary. The reading of this is to show the broad day and night difference between Joshua, Moses, and God, despite the changes, and, nevertheless, the children of Israel. There was no reason for the children of Israel to fail. But nevertheless, they did not continue in the work that God purposed for them in the change. Maybe some big change has happened. Maybe a big health crisis happened in your life. And your life has changed. Now, this is very common. In our prayer meetings on Tuesday night, we pray for different people. And some of them, their life has changed completely because of cancer. And some other in your own life because of certain ailment. You cannot work anymore. Or you cannot do this or that as you used to. God allowed that big change. Have you submitted? Maybe you just resigned to it. But are you faithful in that change? Now, this is the message. You cannot not be faithful. Nevertheless, God's commentary is nevertheless, after this change, the individual tribes failed. Maybe there's a big change in financial situation. In that change, do you remain faithfully obeying the commandments of God, living the Christian life faithfully still? Or say, how this changes, what's the point? I obeyed God, I served Him, and then all these things happened in my life, my health, my finances. Joshua can say that, God, what's the point? I fought all this, now you do not make me to be continuing as a leader. Moses can say the same thing. 40 years, God, I bore all the troubles that these people brought to me, and now I'm not crossing. What's the point? No, he faithfully just divided the land. Maybe some job situation changed in your life. You are no longer in that position at work. Or maybe you used to be someone important, doing important jobs. But now, because of the situation in society, Maybe you're just an Uber driver now. When you're driving around, passengers sit in your car. Oh, this person used to work for me. Now I'm his cab driver. You go back and you get fed up. What's the point? Will you abide faithful? To Moses and Joshua, no change. No change in their heart towards God and their walk with God. No change. Maybe some area of service in church has changed for you. Have your attitude changed? Last time I was doing this important role. Now I'm asked to sweep the floor. Now I'm asked to clean the toilets. Now I'm asked to just be a helper or just be nothing. Will you still be faithful? You see, God did not intend that it will always be Joshua leading them going out as a group. God always intended that it will be decentralized. The necessary conquering of the nations is done. Now is the individual's test of faithfulness that they are at now. Have family situation changed? Some of you have become a housewife now. Because you got married, or because after marriage you have children. And in obedience to the Lord's command you, despite all your degrees, achievements, dual income, now you become a housewife. Many things change. Spending power changes. You look at your friends. Wow, they're still continuing to have high tea in expensive restaurants that you used to go with them. And now my life has changed. We used to go for nice holidays. Now my life has changed. How do you respond? Will you now be a faithful mother? A faithful husband, father? Will you be faithful, or you still look back? Well, as soon as possible, I want to go back to that life. Will you be faithful moving forward? So this is where the children of Israel is at. And very sad to read these words. Nevertheless, God's intention was they drive out the individual tribes. Now, whatever pockets of people that have escaped and moved or are still there, God says, now you drive them out. But look at verse 13. Geshurites, Maachathites. Now, these people, the people living on the other side, did not drive out, the eastern side. They left them, and they left them to dwell among them till the day that this book was written. It must have pained Joshua's heart to write this until this day. They still did not become faithful. They still did not change. Now, what would challenge? What would challenge our faithfulness? What are the tests? God intends for you to be faithful. God intended for the individual tribes, no longer as a big people, individuals. So as an individual Christian, as an individual family, as part of this covenantal people of this church, as individual clans, God expects you to be faithful. What are the tests? Now, one of the things that we will be tested on, that you will face, is there will be no one to push you anymore. There will be no one to breathe down your neck anymore. Joshua used to be the one, that leader. He will go recce the ground, he will plan, he will organize, he will agonize in prayer, and then he will gather the people, he will organize them, and he will tell them what to do. He will come up with the plans. And then when they are in battle, he will make sure that you go there, you do this. All right, remember, don't fear. He was the one who kept pushing them, encouraging them, reminding them. But Joshua is not meant to be there anymore. Individual tribes. They were now supposed to be, in that sense, autonomous, and they must drive themselves. But God says, when that happened, nevertheless, they did not do it. That is life, my friends. One day you are going to grow old. One day you may be in nursing home alone. You may not be able to come to church. There's no more pastor reminding you, no more other Christians encouraging you, no more those things. You are alone. Will you continue to be faithfully in your heart and mind, still being a witness to God? Will you? You see, all of us are going to come to that change one day. And God intended change. What will it be? Your children may leave you. But in the past, because I must bring up my children to be godly, so you have that pressure. But now, no more. You are on your own. You must motivate yourself now. Will you be faithfully walking with God? Oh, now I'm in nursing home. Well, I just watch movies, play games with the others, and pray. Still listen to online sermons, live stream from the nursing home. No need anymore. Your walk with the Lord, will you still be faithful? Maybe you become a widow. Last week we talked about those things. Will you still now, my husband is not around anymore, my wife is not around anymore. I will still faithfully go to church on my own. I will still faithfully worship Him. I will still faithfully, whatever I can do, pray, serve in whatever I have my hands are still allowed to do, I will do faithfully. Because there are many, very common, and let us be aware. Let it not be said to us one day, God says, nevertheless, after the spouse passed away, he no longer walk closely with me. He no longer, or she no longer wants to deal with his sins anymore. He no longer wants to obey. Because it's so common in our midst, in many churches that I've been to. When the spouse passes away, the other spouse disappears. May come once in a while, that's it. You see, then you must read this and remember, oh, that is me. I do not want to be unfaithful anymore. Yes, things have changed, but in this change, I remain faithful. Lord, don't say nevertheless. Help me, Lord, and I want to. I resolve to. Maybe you, young person, you are faithful as long as there is this group, right? It's very common. We are part of a group of godly Christians. So I remain faithful. I walk with him. You see, the children of Israel, as long as there was Moses, as long as there was Joshua leading, guiding, reminding, pushing, they went with them. They went with them. And then they saw the victories. But here God says, without Joshua, they did not drive out. They did not continue in battles. Would you continue in your spiritual battles? Will you continue to battle worldliness when you're alone? Now, many students say, I'm worried, Pastor, when I go back to my own country. I worry I cannot stand. Just be faithful. Obey. Don't forget God. You can. Because verse 6, when God says, I will drive out from before the children of Israel. God is saying, it's not about whether Joshua is with you. It's not about whether the whole group is together with you. It's I. You need to walk with me. You must choose to obey. When we live under peer pressure, same for adults. As long as, I'm with church people, there's this group thing, there's peer pressure, there's mutual encouragement. I walk close to the Lord. Now, I'm not saying that being together is not important, all right? So please don't take it to that interpretation. God makes it very clear. Do not neglect the assembling of yourselves. We are expected to do that. But some things that change in your life, you must remember, I still must be faithful. And when there is no longer someone that push me, remind me, young ones, do you need to always wait for daddy and mommy? Have you done your quiet time? Have you drawn close to the Lord in prayer today? Have you spent time with the Lord so that you don't fall? Joshua reminded them, Moses reminded them, kept giving them the word. During those times, they obeyed, which is good. But you must not depend on your parents. Remember, we had Holiday Bible program. We had the program on doing quiet time. Many of you, after that, your parents say, wow, it's wonderful. They came back, and after that, they would, at night, go back to their own room, take pen and paper, and do their own quiet time. And the parents' hearts were so full of joy. My child spent time with the Lord. What has changed? Has that changed? Have you been faithful? Or God says, nevertheless, now there is no more pressure. Do you need people to push you? Go to church. Go to church. There is no more Joshua to say, we need to go to battle. We need to fight. We can't rest on our laurels. There are battles to fight. Did Joshua need to say that to them anymore? No more. So whether you're in that group or whether God says, now you are on your own, no one is breathing down your neck anymore, will you be faithful? Now, when you begin to realize life has changed, it has become clear that now I will live on my own. Whether it's singlehood, widowhood, whatever it is. Will you change? You say, well, no one is watching over my back now. Well, even if I lie and don't go to church, well, I need live stream. I'm not well. No one knows. But God knows. Will you be faithfully walking with Him, obeying His commandments? So you see, when God intended this change, the children of Israel were going through another test for themselves. Now, what are the tests that we will face that will challenge our faithfulness? Well, I think another thing that we can see here is little things. Faithfulness is being faithful in little things. The Christian must learn that. The children of Israel, now they used to fight big battles, major battles. But now it is just, I live in this land, all right, over there, these are the people we need to drive out. No big deal, no major miracles needed. God says they are weak already. Just faithfully go and clean up. Now, little things in life. God already said, he that is faithful in little will be faithful in much. Are you? So your life has changed. Have you made the discipline now to be watching anything that God says? Well, Geshurites and Maachathites are small fries. I'm not interested. Now, they went forth fighting famous kings, giants. They went. Sometimes we are like that. When it's major and exciting, well, we faithfully go and do. Can it be like that in service, in church? When it's a major role, visible role, famous role, you keep doing it, keep doing it. But there are things that no one notices, no one knows. For them, Og, Bashan, I'm part of those battles, Og and Bashan, I was involved. And we defeated these world empire famous kings. But now, Geshurites, Maachathites, God didn't even give them names for the kings. I am not so interested. Be a mother. Mother. My friends will laugh at me. Housewife. Sharon went for a haircut, and then very often this question comes up. So she'll come and say, the hairdresser asked me, "Oh, what do you do? What do you work as?" And then you say, "Oh, I'm a housewife." Then suddenly they don't know what to say. They're like very embarrassed. Oh, so poor thing. Kind of attitude. The world, that's how they think. Maybe your parents even tell you, all your degrees, housewife. Embarrassment to our family. Just Geshurites and Maachathites. No. Work for big company. Wow, when we're doing this kind of thing, we work very hard. But housewife, just do whatever. Godly, bring up godly seed. What's so important about that? You see, the driving out of the Geshurites and the Maachathites is an important thing. God himself says, these small fries, I will drive them out. God did not say, they're small fries. Even I, God, am not interested. I'm too high for that. No, God said, I will drive them out. You see, our faithful God is like that. What about us? Well, these things do not bring me money. These things do not bring me fame, do not bring me glory. And if there's no one breathing down my neck, no one pushing me, I'm just going to leave them alone. That's what they did. They left them alone. Dwell among them, and they dwell among them until this day. Did not bother. All of us will be tested, my friends. How will you view these things? Now, if God does bring a change, and now your role become a little role, look at every battle there with faithfulness. And do all things completely, obediently, thoroughly. So you see, when it comes to the test, how do we know? Parents, you know how to test your children. How do you test your children's faithfulness? When it's big, interesting, fun things, they want to do it. But right? When the novelty wears off, novelty wears off, means now they look at this thing, it's not so fun anymore. Right? Initially, want to wash plates. Why? Oh, so fun. Play with bubbles. And then they see you do that. Oh, I want to do that. Now after they do it for some time, hey, this is quite dirty work. I'm not so interested anymore. Then you need to train their faithfulness. And I don't want to say, parents, training your children in little things is not unimportant. God now will put the children of Israel through that test. They, as individuals, need to stand. No longer just dependent on someone pushing them and on Joshua. The little things that you ask them to do is all part of training their discipline, that when it comes to spiritual things, they will also be very serious. They will also take things very seriously and say, I will do this properly and completely. Training them to sit at worship is that. So don't be discouraged. They cry, they are fidgety. Slowly. You cannot be faithful if you're someone who, been there, done that, not interested already, and now I'm going to be fidgety. Look for the next big thing. No. And that is what happened to them. Well, we are no longer part of these big battles, so just let these people be. How do you test your children's faithfulness? You give them small tasks. How do they do it? Well, the big part. Maybe they do the big part. All right, mow the garden time. Whoa, they're very excited. They want to be the one pushing the lawn mower. They want to be the one using the whacker. And then, all right, now time to, like the children of Israel, mop up, sweep the grass, collect the grass, throw them in dustbin. The not so exciting things. Never mind, just leave all the grass there, pile them up. Then the child is struggling with being faithful in little things, unpleasant things, seemingly unimportant things. And that is how God looks at our lives. Many of us, when we are involved in big projects, we do a great job. And even in the company, right? Those of you who work in company, you know that. All the excitement and a very, very faithful, doing a good job, but the test is always the last part of the project, isn't it? That is always the problem. The last part of tying up the loose ends. Then you see the engineers, you see the accountants, you see doing a half-hearted job. Documentation, right? Is the most difficult thing to get people to do. Documentation. Sitting there just typing out the processes, the documentation, what has been done, and what we should not do next time, and what we should put together. Now, that is always the test. Now, I'm very thankful in our church. There are many people who serve and they do a very good job, big things, visible things. And then when it comes to the documentation part where no one sees, the painful, non-glorious, no thankfulness in that, many of them faithfully give very good documentation because to them, I am handing this over to someone else. Their concern is to do a faithful job, the details, but some you will see. As long as they get glory, name for it, they do a good job. And then I'll hand over, we take the documents, it's all empty. Are you faithful in little things? The tying up, the cleaning up, the loose ends. Train yourself to be such a person. That is the behavior you and I must have in spiritual things. The little things. When God gives small little things in your life, and some commandments that you feel, Lord, this is not so important. Those are beginning signs in your heart that you need to fear. God, I think I am going to be like the 3 tribes. Manasseh, half tribe of Manasseh, the Gadites and Reubenites on the eastern side. I think I'm beginning to be like them. I think I'm behaving and I have characteristics like them. God, I need to change. Right, fathers? The visibility of being an important person at work, wow, great. Home, take care of the child, to teach the child, bring up the child in godly way, bring the child to church. Nothing glorious about that. Not interested. Well, if I have time, I'll do it. If not, just let it be. That was their attitude. Just let it be. Just let them be. No big deal. Now, tying up loose ends. As our life change, the big things are over, we begin to live lives that people may not see. That is the test. Because for the individual tribes, as they went around mopping up, there's no more big name battles. So far we read all big name battles. No miracles. Just ordinary cleanup of the land. They won't even know over the other side what cleanup they are doing. They won't even know the other tribe what other small battles they are fighting. They don't know. They are just told, that's where you are, that's your lot, those are the people there, you do it. They were not told to look at each other, just clean up, tie up loose ends. Now, what God has said for your life moving forward, view it as something that now onwards, like the children of Israel's change, this is my change. Not only I submit and accept, God, I am excited. Even the small things, I am excited to do it. You are with me. You will help me. This change in my life, whether it's I'm going to live in this country or the other country. Now, some of the students who are going back now for the holidays, some of them don't know whether they can come back. Now, how are you going to view it, dear student? Are you still going to say, if I'm not here with my Christian brethren, if I'm not here with Bible studies, if I'm not here with a church, well, I just give up. No. God says the children of Israel, I will give them the land. I will. Maybe you are going to start work somewhere. What will you be when you're alone with your colleagues? Now, this is not just about a major change. This is frankly everyday life. Every day you step out of your home, there is a change. Now, you are on your own. Mommy and daddy is not in school with you to watch you, to push you, to organize and tell you what to obey God. No more. You are on your own. You have your own battles. In school, at work, the moment you step up, husbands, fathers, it's the same. Young person, look at your life. Elderly is the same. Every day, as being faithful in small things and big things. Now, what are the barriers to such a life? What are the barriers? How is it that these people left the Geshurites and the Maachathites there? Now you turn to Deuteronomy. Those of you who attended prayer meeting, you will know. Deuteronomy. God did warn them. All right? God did warn them that as they enter the land, there is this big danger for them. Chapter 6. Right? The famous chapter. Now, these are words that God told this generation before they cross over. They were told these things. They were warned. They were warned. In chapter 6, now verse 10. God says, and it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath brought thee into the land which he sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give thee great and goodly cities which thou buildest not, and houses full of all good things which thou fillest not, and wells digged which thou diggest not, vineyards and olive trees which thou plantest not, when thou shalt have eaten and be full, then beware, lest thou forget the Lord which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. That was the problem. God told them, this is what you need to beware of. You will forget me. In other words, you will not be faithful to what I ask you to do. You will forget the things that I tell you to do. Now, what will make them forget? What will make you unfaithful when the change comes? What is it? God says in verse 10, you have goodly cities, which you built not. I gave it to you. You have houses full of good things. Your life is getting better. Well, you can buy this, you can have this, you can have that. They didn't need to buy. They are supposed to walk in and take over. Now suddenly many things began to distract them. Wow, this pot in the house. Wow, this floor in the house. Wow, these different rooms in the house. They literally will walk into all these houses and say, all right, this is where I'm going to live. So imagine, you walk around Mount Pleasant, Apple Cross, and they walk around. All right, I'm going into this house. I'm going to stay here. Goodly houses that you didn't build. Things full of good things. You don't have to worry about washing machine. You don't have to worry about oven and all there. And then what he says, wells that you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. Means your farm's ready for you to use and continue farming. What is this description? What was the barrier to their faithfulness? Now, all of a sudden, the problem is distraction. Distraction is what causes us to not be faithful after that's change. Well, for you, it can be a health thing, your health change. Now, many distractions. Maybe many medical appointments, they're not sinful. Maybe many things you need to take care of, not sinful. But distraction. Distraction make you forget your purpose. That is the point. Now I'm in university. Wow, look at university. Look at the library. Wow, look at all the things I get to study. Distraction, they are not evil. Things that God gave them, they are not evil. But God said, it will now draw your hearts and mind from being faithful to me. Well, maybe you end up staying in a nursing home. Nursing homes in Australia is quite amazing. Distraction. Now I am just going to have a retirement life. Lawn bowling, watching movies, someone to do my nails. I don't know. Actually, I visited some people in the nursing home. It's quite amazing. They have hairdressing salon, nail salon, nail polishing salon, movie rooms and all that. Well, that may be your life one day. Distraction. Now, no need to pray. No need to worship. Distraction at work. Distractions will come. That is the point. When you go back to work, you are going to start working. All of a sudden, a whole new world opens up. These children of Israel, they walked in and took over, and a whole new world opened up. When you come out and work, I keep warning you when you come out and work, a whole new world of Satan awaits you, of temptation awaits you, of drawing you away from faithfully walking with your God and being a testimony to your God will distract you. It will come. God said, it shall be. Things shall be there, and beware. Beware. Famous words. Will it be beware and you're faithful, or beware and then nevertheless? They failed. What will it be for you? These people moved in. They will have a lot of things that suddenly changes. They need to settle their family into the houses. You say, hey, just like me. As a mother now, my life has changed. I need to take care of the child. I need to settle things in the home. Now, they have the same challenges. Now, the men, the wells need maintenance. The vineyard needs pruning. The olive trees need fertilizing, needs reaping of the fruits. All these real life things set into their lives. The everyday life things that are necessary comes in. The question is, when all these things come, will you be focused on still, Lord, I cannot forget you. I must maintain my walk with you. I must know my priorities. I must know the things that you ask me to deal with. I will deal with the Geshurites and the Maachathites. I won't be just, hey, hang on, forget about them. You know, there are, I don't know, those farmers, those of you who like gardening. What happens to trees? Well, there are birds coming and eating up the fruits. No, hang on. There are rats. There are worms. There are decaying of this and that. Wait. These things are very important, you know. I need to be busy and faithfully taking care of these things. But Geshurites, Maachathites, later. Or if at all. You see, God says, you walk into the land, there will be these things, but please don't forget your purpose. The division of the land. Why did they get distracted? Because they forgot the reason why the land needs to be distributed and why they have land. They were given land, divided to them, because each one was supposed to be part of contributing to the witness of Israel. That is the reason. They were there for a reason as a people, as Israel, and individually as children of Israel. They were supposed to be faithful witnesses. That was what they were. That was the reason for giving the land. Not for them to enjoy these things. That's why God says, when you're in the land, you have all these things. Enjoy! No, God says, beware lest thou forget to be faithful to me. God did not say, go enjoy. Now, the big distraction is you and I forget our purpose on earth. You and I forget the reason why God put us in that lot. God chose the lot for us in life. Just like every lot, every division of land, God chose for each tribe. And God said, this is your lot. This is your lot. That is where you will be. And there you faithfully deal with what I ask you to deal with, the sins, the spiritual battles. You don't get distracted by daily life. Not that daily life is not important. Don't get distracted from your purpose. Whatever God has changed in your life, it is still for you to be living lives that are godly, holy, obeying every commandment, dealing with every sin that God asks you to deal with. Every enemy of God, deal with it. That is the purpose. But you see, we began to see, my job is for me and my family to make money, to enjoy myself. We forget the lot in life that God chose. My child is for me to bring glory to my name, to show off to others. My health is for me to go on holidays and enjoy gardening and enjoy eating. You see, that is what happened to them. Whatever God gave them became a distraction to their purpose. That is the problem. Now, these things will change. Or rather, things will change in our lives. You are going to come out and work one day, young ones. You are going to go old one day, middle-aged ones. All these are going to change. Look forward to being faithful. Now the thing is this. You say, all right, but never mind. I'm not so faithful. Well, the Geshurites, stay among them, right? Look at Joshua 13, just stay among them and remain until this day. No big deal, right? Remain until this day. And then the Lord move on and say, other divisions. Now turn back to Joshua chapter 13, please. Joshua chapter 13. Now look at verse 13. How did God describe the situation of them not being faithfully doing what God said you must do when you're in the land? What happened? Look at verse 13. God put it this way. Nevertheless, the children of Israel, number one, God did not say the eastern tribes, the eastern 2.5 tribes. No, God said the children of Israel. When you fail as an individual, when you fail as a family in a church, God just look at you and say, you fail the mission of God. Your life, your family life impacts the mission of the church. Understand that. So God did not say the 2.5 tribes, say the children of Israel. He saw them as a whole, though He gave them individual responsibilities as tribes. Next thing, see how God puts it in verse 13. They expelled not. That was their duty. Deal with these people. Deal with sin. Obey my commandments. Now, then you see, in verse 13, expel not the Geshurites and the Maachathites. Then God repeats, but the Geshurites and the Maachathites dwell among them. Why this emphasis? And keep drawing our attention to this group of people that they did not faithfully deal with. Now know this. When we do not live faithfully to what God tells us to do, in whatever God now has changed your life to, whether positively in your eyes or negatively in your eyes, if you don't stay faithful, what will happen? Who are these Geshurites? Who are they? Now, these are the ones that God tells us that King David, in King David's time, he married the daughter of a Geshurite king. That is what happened. Remember the story? And number one, the fact that God said he married the daughter of a Geshurite king tells us one thing. At David's time, Geshur became a nation because they had their own king. They were not slaves of the children of Israel like others. They were a stand-alone nation on their own with their own king at that time. And yet, they were among the children of Israel. The failure of dealing with sin, the failure of dealing with the enemies of God, that is what will happen. When you don't faithfully obey God, at that point of time, you say a small thing. What happened? Not being faithful will be painful. It will happen. You say, well, marry Geshurite king, then so what? Who was the son? Those of you who know Bible history. Who was the son? Absalom. Absalom. What's the big deal about Absalom? We know what Absalom did. Absalom plotted to kill all his other brethren because his sister Tamar was raped. So now he wants to kill the other king's sons. And he did so. Brought a lot of grief to David. And when he did that, what did he do? He ran away. Where did he run to? He ran to his grandfather in Geshur. That is what happened. You see, now Geshur as a nation was actually a pain to the children of Israel. Now, if you turn to Numbers 33. Numbers 33. Not taking the warning of God to be faithful all the way and deal with everything that He asks you to deal with. There are consequences, my friends. Numbers 33. Can you look at Numbers 33? Now, let me read to you verses 53 to 55. 53. And ye shall possess the inhabitants of the land, and dwell therein, for I have given you the land to possess it. You will not fail, you should not fail. But look, verse 54, and ye shall divide the land by lot for an inheritance among your families. And to the more ye shall give, the more inheritance. And to the fewer ye shall give less inheritance. Every man's inheritance shall be in the place where his lot falleth, according to the tribes of your fathers, and ye shall inherit. Now, note this verse 55. But if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that those which ye let remain of them shall be pricks in your eyes, and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwell. This is what God said. This is before they entered the land. Just like now, God is warning. God tells you, if you don't remain faithful and do what I tell you to do in this new change in your life. Now, maybe some of you have begun to realize, oh, being a Christian is that. It's not living for myself. It is not enjoying my life on earth. Everything that God gave me as a student, as a working person, as a family, you mean all those things was for me to use to glorify God, to live for Him, and living for Him is number one. And all these things are just necessities in my life to enable me to walk faithfully with Him. Oh, I didn't know that. Now that I know that is my purpose to fulfill, now you must learn the other thing. My life must change now. I must deal with things that God asked me to deal with. It is not an option for me to choose and live as I want to and say, these are small sins. You see, that was a problem with them. These are small groups. Just let them be. When we begin to tolerate and say, let these sins be. Let them live. Let them, they're no big deal sins. These are no big deal people. No big deal enemies. Let them live. The Geshurites. Why did God keep saying the Geshurites, the Geshurites, the Geshurites? Is when the children of Israel read this, they really realize, yes, our unfaithfulness to what God wants us to do, now we are reaping the consequences of not being faithful in our walk with God. It will come. God told them many times, it shall be. You beware. Will you beware? Say, no, Pastor, it's nothing. My children have these friends. My children are doing nothing. In fact, I'll be with them. I'll do these things with them. Nothing, small things. What happened to Israel? What almost happened to Israel? Absalom, when he came back from his exile, living with his grandfather in Geshur, he came back. He deceived David, he came back, pretending to be repentant, pretending to want to go and fulfill a vow in the city. Went back to Jerusalem. What did he do? You know the story. He went to gather people to support him. To do what? He began to declare, I am king. What did he do? He pursued his father to kill him. Can you imagine the son pursue the father to kill the father? This was the kind of thorns in the eyes, thorns in the flesh, the pain that David reaped because of the failure of the people to be faithful to remove the Geshurites. Now, very sadly, David did not relate it to all this. You know the story. David kept crying for Absalom, yearning for him, although he was a terrible son. And when Absalom died, David mourned even more, to the point where his general said, David, it looks like you rather all your friends who, when Absalom pursued you, we all faithfully supported you, went into the wilderness, went into hiding with you, protected you. It looks like you rather all your friends, we die and your son live. It looks like that, you know, David. Joab, his general, openly told David. Now, why do I want to bring this up? You know, when we are not faithful and careful, and we don't deal with sin, over time, you and I will change. You and I will begin to not see. What do I mean by that? David by then did not relate, these are the Geshurites, I am reaping the sins of their unfaithfulness, and I myself should not have married the Geshurites. God already said, when you are in the land, in Deuteronomy 6, don't marry their daughters. They will take your children away from me. That is exactly what happened. Was Absalom a believer? Hardly, I think. No believer would go and openly kill stepbrothers. And after that, openly pursue to kill own blood father. Absalom cannot be a believer. Geshurites should have been in David's mind. This is what I'm reaping because of their unfaithfulness. My own unfaithfulness, I, as David, should have removed these nations in my time. But instead, I married them, contrary to God's word. You see, what is happening is this. By the time David, in David's time, he do not view the Geshurites as enemies, as thorns, as danger at all. He does not view them as that. In fact, quite nice people. I'll marry your daughter. Yeah, let's make league. During Joshua's time, they knew they are enemies. They knew these are enemies. They may not have dealt with them, but they saw them as enemies, as danger, but not Joshua. You see, the point is this. Over time, you will change. You will begin to not relate unfaithfulness to God's commandments, unfaithfulness to walk with Him, to fulfill your purpose. You will not relate calamities in your life to that unfaithfulness. You know what I'm saying? You will not relate it anymore. He did not relate it to the Geshurites. He mourned for Absalom. You know the saddest state of being unfaithful is this. Over time, you accept sin. You tolerate sin that are around. In fact, over time, you begin to make friends. And you actually do not even see them as a threat to your spiritual walk anymore. Now, parents, don't be so foolish if your children is in unequal yoke. No, he will get converted. God says, just don't. Wait till he's converted. Because you will change. Now, how many have we seen? Whether it's individuals in unequal yoke or parents agreeing to unequal yoke, over time they begin to see, this boy is very good actually. This boy is actually not evil. During Joshua's time, they would see the Geshurites and Maachathites as enemies of God, evil that God said wipe them out. But by the time it reaches over time, no, they're not so evil. Evil, no. Kill all of them, no. Let them be a nation. Over time and interaction will change your view of the person. You don't practice biblical separation, be faithful and obey that. Over time, you say, no, these people, they are quite nice. Yeah, they speak in tongues, they believe in dreams and visions, but they're actually very nice Christians. Let's not point out their errors. Not being faithful to God, you will begin to see all these things as not a problem. And in fact, God will begin to chastise you. God began to chastise David. But you do not see any record of David moaning and say, oh, I should have removed the Geshurites instead of marrying the king's daughter. David didn't even link it. Over time, when calamities after calamities and problems that God brings into you, your life, your personal life, or your family life, you cannot see it. And you will just say, it's not linked. Pastor, don't link those things. Nothing to do with my unfaithfulness. Nothing to do with not dealing with these things. Nothing to do with these things. Not linked, not linked. That is the danger of not being faithful to every commandment, dealing with everything that God says, deal with it. Half-hearted obedience, partial obedience. That is the problem with Israel always. Are there partial obedience in your life? I think, well, God, I'm quite good. I'm obeying many things. These other things, I will let them live. God says, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. That is the problem with Israel. You read later in the book of, you go back and read Judges 1 and 2. The next generation did not bother. You just take one generation, my friends. In fact, less than one generation. You read Judges, which is the continuing of the record after Joshua. Tribe after tribe records that did not deal with them. Now let me ask you, where is Israel today? Where is Israel today as God's witness? Not there. The church has temporarily replaced them. The state of Israel today that is not used of God, witness of God today, is the reminder, the very strong reminder. This record beginning in Joshua chapter 13, verse 13, and continuing after that is the reason. God said, I will be faithful. I will deliver. Why? Why do you let these things live? He said, but God, I cannot. I don't want to. That is the problem. Same for church. In closing, it is the same. If the church does not deal with everything, that God says, deal with this kind of sins. Drive these sins out of the church. Teach the people to drive these sins out of their life. If the church does not faithfully do that, now in fact I would say the other way around. Moses, God gave faithful leaders, Moses and Joshua. Having a sound church, having a sound leadership is not the point here. The point here is as individuals. That is God's point. As individuals, will you do your part? That is the point. Don't just feel, I belong to a sound church. As long as I go to a sound church, in my own life, in my own area, in my lot in life, I will let these things be. In my life, in my children's life, I will let them be. It will come and bite you. Same for the church. If the church do not openly preach, deal with sins that God says, please deal with. Now, when Paul said, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump, why did he mention that to the church? He said, now, if I let one small little wrong doctrine of circumcision that is important for salvation, just circumcision, the Jews think that circumcision is so important. I'm a Jew, why fight? He said, now, if I let this, it will change the gospel. It will change the church. That is why he said, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. And he said, now, what's the point of me being persecuted What's the point of me being troubled left and right? Because I preach that circumcision does not save. You see, if it is a small thing, why do I want to preach it and suffer? The church deals with many things. The family model. The church deals with worldliness in young people's life. The church deals with music problems. The church deals with drinking problems. The church deals with many things which churches do not like to deal with. But as long as the church thinks, let this small worldliness creep in, let this small carnality live, so that, we don't have trouble and just enjoy church, the next generation will suffer. So, my dear friends, God calls us to a godly life. Wherever you are, whatever changes He brings, the question is always, who are the Geshurites and Maachathites that you let live in your life? Or are you faithfully dealing with everything? Let us rise to sing the closing hymn. 407. Jesus calls us. 407.